Hello, this is Deborah Anderson, the Black Woman Animator, coming back to you with another video. And in this video, I have Ron Myrick, a veteran in the animation industry. And so I want to get started with asking you, where are you from and how did you grow up?
Well, I grew up here in LA, but my family migrated from Atlanta, Georgia back in the late 50s.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and I have a rather eclectic upbringing. My father brought us out here and then he abandoned us. My mother
Oh,
stayed,
wow.
my mother, tough Black woman, she stayed with 3 children and
Mm-hmm.
very few contacts, no family support.
Mm-hmm.
She raised us here. But the next year after he left, the age of 9, I moved to Chicago for a year.
Mm-hmm.
Coldest year of my life.
That's why I left Detroit.
Second coldest experience I've had, Detroit. My mother lived in
Mm-hmm.
Detroit after we'd grown up for
Mm-hmm.
10 or 12 years. But I moved to Chicago, came back to LA, then reconnected with my dad in Brooklyn, New York. And so LA was my base, but I always traveled to different parts of the country. I used to say I've been in the best ghettos of the US: Atlanta,
Mm-hmm.
Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy, LA, South Central. And so that was my upbringing.
Did either, growing up in LA or traveling around the country, did it help curate, anything artistically with you, or what was the experience like going to different places, experiencing the different types of blackness?
Well, it broadened my vision and view of America and culture across the board. First off, coming here from from Atlanta, I was attending a segregated elementary school, but I really didn't understand segregation. I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really get it. So when I came here, um, the schools were integrated. So I was going to school with Black, Hispanic, Chinese, all
Mm-hmm.
races, and that kind of laid a foundation when I went to Chicago. It was an all
Mm-hmm.
Black school, but race was never really an issue. Um, my eyes were open when I went to Brooklyn and I encountered Black Puerto Ricans. I'd never seen them
Mm-hmm.
speak another language. So when I saw them speaking Spanish, it, it froze me. I was like, what are they saying? What? How is this real?
Right.
Um, and then, of course, New York being a melting pot on many levels, I met Jamaicans, Africans, as well as Black Puerto Ricans. And
Mm-hmm.
so living and moving around the country helped me to get a broader understanding of how vast the world and the country that we live in is. As
Mm-hmm.
far from a artistic point of view, it didn't have a great influence on me at the time. I think my
Mm-hmm.
greatest influence then was comic books.
Yeah. So that goes into, what was your relationship with art in your childhood, and what was your journey to working in animation as you became an adult?
So I had a great imagination, via comic books. I love to read. Um, you know, I started with DC, but I read everything, even the Sunday
Mm-hmm.
comics, and imitated the drawing styles of different artists that I like. Um, then got into the Marvel universe as it was growing in the early '60s, um, and it was kind of like Marvel, DC, but there were other uh, action comics as well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I even read some Archie, Richie Rich. you know,
Yeah.
it was across the board, but always wondering, why aren't there any black characters? Where's the characters that look like us? So a friend and I, we would create our own characters. I do not remember any of their names. I don't remember. They had powers and they did heroic things, but
Mm-hmm.
I you know, but
Right.
it was just fun. So
Were you drawing black characters? Because I know sometimes, at least in my generation, people end up drawing white characters all the time. Were you drawing black characters?
they were probably white, um, with some black characters in it, but
Mm-hmm.
probably white, being influenced by the artist.
Right.
Um, as I, but as my talent started to grow and I started getting trained, I ventured off into fine arts. So I have a BFA in life drawing,
Mm-hmm.
and that was my passion, was drawing. I did not study animation in school or college. I just knew from what I'd seen in television, they draw the same thing over and over and over, but I didn't understand how the process, how that worked.
Yeah.
Um, so I went to the College of Arts and Crafts in Oakland eventually after graduating from high school, and it was there that I was introduced to animation through a friend who had an interview at an art agency
Mm-hmm.
to go to the studio filmation. They were producing Fat Albert and 5 other cartoons at the time.
Mm-hmm.
The Archie, Star Trek, um, Mission Magic, My Favorite Martian, Lassie. I didn't count, but they needed young talent. They needed new
Yeah.
people. Um, Again, nobody looked like me. I took a drawing test, had no idea how to draw for animation, so I'd say I failed miserably. It was pretty embarrassing. But yeah, the guy interviewing me, he said he wanted to see if I really wanted the job,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, and I did. There was just something inside of me that said I can do this. I know if I had
Mm-hmm.
the opportunity, I can do this. So
Yeah.
they had a program they were starting for in-betweeners, and I think layout and in-between um, animation. So that's where I started, was as an in-between.
Nice. Um, so you worked on many shows, but I'm gonna highlight several of them. I'm not. So, as an artist, you worked on Fab Albert and the Cosby Kids, Spider Woman, Flash Gordon, The Jetsons, Smurfs, Alvin and Chipmunks, Start Reading Duck, Dennis the Menace, Captain Planet, Sonic the Hedgehog, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Life with Louie. I remember Louie Anderson. Cow and Chicken, SpongeBob SquarePants, Cat Dog, Ed, and Eddie, Black Dynamite. As a director, you did the California Raisin Show, Mother Goose and Grimm, Street Sharks, Garfield and Friends, Bobby's World, Sea Bear and Jamal. And then you did some ABC weekend specials, Jiram Pimbira and the Magic Flute. So, does with all the stuff that you've worked on, and it's been many more than that. Just look at his IMDb
That,
page.
that's enough. I
Yeah, but
and wonder who is that
it's you.
guy. Yeah.
So does it feel like working on all that? Does it feel any different when you were able to work on shows that had characters that looked like you?
Um. Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, they've been few and far between, but I
Right.
loved that. That's been my dream, is to uh, create or make work on black programs, black animation, um, and and it's been a frustration because of the process,
Mm-hmm.
studio system, the networks, um, their biased opinion. I mean, in the 80s and even 90s, if you came with a show to pitch, they would tell you, we're not interested in shows for girls. We're not interested in shows for. We're only interested in shows for kids 6 to 11. Yeah, if it's too old, it's
Mm-hmm.
kids 13, 14 and up, too old, and white boys. So
Mm-hmm.
white 6 to 11 boys.
Would they explicitly say white boys, or was it coded language?
It was very thinly, veiled, coded. You understood. They mean white boy, but they didn't come right out and say it explicitly.
Americana.
Close enough. You got it. You got it.
Yeah.
It's like if we get the white boys, everybody else will come.
Mm.
So you know, um, my love of animation has been in the process of the creating and doing,
Mm-hmm.
and growing up with characters that were voiced by white men or women, but what you saw was an animal, as in a Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck cartoon, Mickey Mouse.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you kind of take race out of the equation. But as you
Yeah.
get older and more uh, sophisticated, you understand they're reflecting white culture, not our culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So whenever I was given the opportunity, I really jumped at it and hoped for the success of the show. Few of them were successful, but the process was fun.
Yeah. So, you've held many various roles throughout your career: storyboard artist, sheet timer, timing director, animator, producer, director. Which ones have you enjoyed the most?
Uh, being the director,
Mm-hmm.
animation, and because in that position you work with the entire crew, from the
Yeah.
writers. You shape and you tell the story, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what I love doing: storytelling,
Mm-hmm.
uh, assembling the artists together, uh, character designers, painters, then the animators,
Mm-hmm.
and then in the post production, the composer, sound effects editors, the picture editor. It's all fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, uh,
Uh,
but if necessary, I can step back and be a timer, or whatever it takes to get the project done.
so, can you explain the difference? Well, explain first, and then explain the difference between a sheet timer and a timing director.
They're the same. Uh,
Okay. But what do they do?
Well, in the 80s and 90s, as animation was being contracted out overseas, the foreign animators needed us to time the shows to specify where a panel pose went on the exposure.
Mm-hmm.
And being an animator, that was my foundation. It was a
Yeah.
natural transition to start timing. And the timing was in two phases. There was storyboard slugging, which essentially is done by an animatic editor now. But at
Mm-hmm.
that time, we would, uh, based on our knowledge of timing, we would time a storyboard in our head. We would write the numbers down. This scene is 4 feet, characters do, we would break down the action and time out the whole storyboard. Then the timed out storyboard would go to the sheet timer.
Mm-hmm.
So it was in those two categories. So again, as an animator, I was able to go back and forth between the slug the board or write the sheets.
Um, we hear the terms producer and director all the time, but can you tell me the difference between what a producer does and what a director does?
Yeah, again, it's kind of like potatoes, whatever they want to call you. But um, or depending on the hierarchy at the studio.
Mm,
The
mm-hmm.
bigger studios have more layers and levels of executives and people in charge.
Yeah.
Smaller studio, um, you're wearing multiple hats, making decisions and working with whoever the executive producer is. But
Yeah.
it's but basically you're doing this.
Um, considering you started doing animation in a different way than we do it now, what is the power do you think in the old way of doing animation, how you started, and how a lot of studios do animation now? Like, what was the power of back then, and then what's kind of power of now? Maybe the pros and cons of each.
Well, then in the caveman days, we drew on paper, pencil and paper. We did it traditional. You could not.
Mm,
Uh, you The process was the same, but the technology limited what you could do. For example,
mm-hmm.
Storyboard Pro allows you to create an animatic on your own.
Yeah.
When we were animating, an animatic was a luxury item, and it was either shot on film or at that time they had a digital electronic device called a Lion Lamb machine, named after the two guys that created it.
Mm-hmm.
It was their last names, but you shot your animation frame by frame, but you could get an instant playback.
Mm-hmm.
Contrast to shooting it on film, sending the film out to be developed and getting it back the next day or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's always been an effort to get that immediate reaction or playback of what you're storyboarding or animating. And now, the whole process is enveloped into one thing, one person. I'm frankly, it blows my mind what the storyboard artists are able to do, but also required to do to a large
Yeah.
extent. They're animated. It's it's pretty impressive.
Is there anything that the immediacy now that the animation industry has gotten used to getting stuff immediate, is there anything that has been lost from the caveman days?
Hmm. Mm, um,
Or even in general, if it's not related to the digital aspect, but if it's what what kids out of school are lacking or anything like that.
well, first of all, there was a different style of animation. Then
Mm-hmm.
we were more from the old school of Chuck Jones, Tex Avery, uh, the guys who were really pushing the envelope of animation with stretch and squash and big takes and wanting to have the characters' personalities just really wild and crazy and fun. Um, and now there's less of that and more talking heads.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of dialogue. In fact, the shows are a lot like radio plays, nonstop dialogue and characters just standing and talking.
Yeah.
Uh, for me, that's boring, but
Yeah.
but I respect it, but
Mm-hmm.
it's it lacks the heart and the fun, from my point of view, that we had
Mm-hmm.
uh, drawing and creating a character, developing its personality, and so on. It's like the shows are more writer driven and writer
Yeah.
controlled by writer
Mm-hmm.
than artists. And um, we would take a script and shape it,
Yeah.
really flesh it out. I miss that, and that is something I see lacking.
That sounds similar to, when I went to the movies to go see Fences with
Mm-hmm.
Denzel and Viola Davis. I
Okay.
was just like, man, they just keep talking. Like, because, in a play, because it came from August Wilson's play, I mean, you talk a lot in a play, but I just didn't feel like it was adapted for film because I feel like sometimes you have to talk in a play because people can't see you from where they're sitting, but in a
Mhm.
film you can do like a eye look, like a eye gaze or something. I just didn't feel like they did. I was like, man, they are talking a lot, and so it sounds similar to what you're saying, where because people are writers and not artists or animators, they don't really know or realize how you can use body to tell something.
Yeah, an expression. Yes. I enjoyed Fences, and it was pretty much shot like a play. Uh,
Yeah.
and yeah, looking at the cartoons that, there's no denying the success of Family Guy, Simpsons, the primetime cartoons, where they just almost talk from start to finish. Uh, Cut away to gags, um, but they're different. They're just,
Yeah, I feel like with Family Guy and all and those type of shows, you really have to be up on current events to get. You can't. I feel like it's impossible to get all the jokes that they input into those TV shows because you have to be up on current events, history. Like you have to know everything in life to understand every joke because
and
they'll do 3 jokes in like 10 seconds.
yeah, yeah, and they're coming fast, and you know, yeah, that's the style. Um, so, like I said, I respect it, but it's not where I came
Yeah. Um, So, throughout the years of continually meeting new animators, what is something you consistently, if you have to teach them that they may not have learned in school or from being self taught?
Well, what I look for in a young animator, or let's just say artist, is
Mm-hmm.
first of all passion. Um, that you know they they have a passion and desire to do,
Mm-hmm.
and if they have that, I can help to mold and mentor and direct them. Um, I've had the privilege to do that over my career. And if nothing else, that's something that I appreciated from the gentleman that hired me, um, even though he fired me 6 years later. He gave me a chance. I started my own business and he fired
Oh, okay.
me. But if he hadn't seen that spark and
Yeah.
desire in me, I would have never, well, I won't say never, but it gave me the opportunity. And
Mm-hmm.
so um, throughout my career, I've looked and found a number of young people who had that passion, had that desire. I had a young man several years ago. There was a there was an awards program where they
Mm-hmm.
awarded Black animators. I think it was the city of LA, and the sister that put it together. I'll think of her name later.
Mm-hmm.
But a young man came up to me and he said that he had interviewed with me while I was at Warner Brothers, and I had encouraged him to learn computer animation. He was just starting out, and he asked, "What should he do?" And I
Mm-hmm.
told him, "Learn the computer. That's the future of where things are headed." And this was the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he has been one of the key digital animators at Disney for a while now. I don't know if he's still there, but
Mm-hmm.
he thanked me. And I remember the interview, but it was just that short. But he said, based on that encouragement, it took him in the right direction and along the right path. And he was doing very well.
That's what's great about this. Like, I actually I had a book that I came out with called the Black Hair Alphabet, and people. I mean, obviously, I guess obviously, people have you sign it. I didn't really think about that before I came out with it. I just published it through Amazon, and so as people were having me sign it for their like little nieces or daughters or something, I'm like trying to figure out something to say, and I kind of acknowledged that while I'm just thinking of, oh, let me think of something cool to say, for them receiving it, they might be like, this person directed my life. And I was just trying to think of something cool to say. And so
Right.
that's the cool thing about, giving young people advice is that you're just saying something that makes sense. And then they take it and some of them take it and run with it. And then they are successful as well.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So, and it's really fun to see them, and they leave your life. They go on. You separate, and
Mm-hmm.
then circumstances bring you back together, and it's like you're a director. You're what? And they like, yeah, you told me to do this, and I did it, and now I am running this program, this department. Like, wow. And
That's crazy.
yeah, yeah, but it's also gratifying
Mm-hmm.
because it's been my lifelong passion again to pass it on or pay it forward.
Yeah.
The year I started, there were two black people, two black guys, and myself included, at Filmation, and it was kind of we would kind of whisper like, "Oh, I heard there's two more of us over at Hanna Barbera, and there's a guy named Ron Husband over at Disney, and Floyd Norman."
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, you would get excited to know there's other black people in the
Yeah.
business, but we
Who was
were.
the person you worked with at Filmation?
He actually, we were in the same program, but he was not successful
Okay.
in becoming just an in-betweener. So they moved him into, he became a cell wiper. This is when animation was Xeroxed onto cells, and
Yeah.
they would wipe the cell. I think, yeah, it would Xerox the drawing on the cell, paint on the cell, and before the cells were shot, a cell wiper would wipe it down clean to get all the dust and fingerprints and everything off of it, and then it went under the camera.
Yeah.
So he was a cell wiper, which is a job anyone could have done, but at least they kept being busy for the summer.
Mm-hmm.
I never saw him.
Okay. Uh, what is a memorable success you've had in your career? And it doesn't necessarily have to be big. It could be something like small that a little obstacle that you faced, or it can be big. What is like a memorable success? I'm sure you've had many.
Uh, well, I think my biggest success is just surviving. Just how long I've been in animation now, 48.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And but traveling the world, um, it's that's been a privilege and pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
Certain shows I felt made a difference. One of my favorite shows I produced was called Ozzy and Drix. I did that at Warner Brothers based on the movie Osmosis Jones.
Okay.
And what I enjoyed about that is it was educational and entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
Talked about, we had funny situations that dealt with the health issues of a young child. Uh, there's a 13-year-old boy, and he was Hispanic.
Mm-hmm.
So he was
Mm-hmm.
just a little white. But uh, it was one of the best shows I feel that I worked on. When I was at Saban Entertainment, um, that's when I started traveling internationally.
Mm-hmm.
And, my first trip was to Korea. So with Don's wife, uh, she was in charge of production at Saban,
Mm-hmm.
and we flew there together, and it was a revelation to see that it's like music is the universal language because
Yeah.
people speak different languages, but they can all play, sheet music or improvised jazz or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I felt that way about animation as I toured the studio and saw young animators with their, animate, but
Mm-hmm.
also working with the exposure sheets, doing everything that we did, but in their language and in their way. But the process was the same.
Right.
So I had a translator, and through the translator, I felt like we were speaking the same language, and I was able to disseminate my vision to their team. And,
Mm-hmm.
the end result there, was on television. But again, just seeing the process and it's worldwide. It was really exciting. I really
Yeah,
enjoyed it.
that's why when people ask me about when I worked at in Korea and I wasn't fluent in Korean and they weren't fluent in English, people sometimes ask me like, how did you do that? I'm like, well, it's art. Like I didn't. It's like make it bigger, make it smaller. I
Yeah,
knew some colors and I
I
made
I,
it work.
I told some people who recently worked on the series Skylanders, and it
Mm-hmm.
was animated in France, in Paris. And I said, I speak artist. I don't speak French. I don't speak,
Right.
but I know how to communicate with artists. And I had a really good rapport with the French director, and
Mm-hmm.
we were, the collaboration of the team. You know, I feel that like that's one of my strengths is working with,
Mm-hmm.
collaborating with them. It's kind of something that's been lost, unfortunately, due to the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
But whether it was Paris, Korea, Japan, Canada, uh,
Mm-hmm.
I was able to communicate and work with the artists. Of course, in Canada they spoke English, but uh,
Yeah.
French, Paris, Japan, and Korea. Uh, you had to sort of have a Vulcan mind melt type thing.
So you mentioned not on this video, but you mentioned that you thought Korea was boring.
Well, yes and no. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
one of my first trips there, maybe it was a second, they took me to some very impressive museums and I think a palace that was
Oh yeah.
uh, quite interesting. Honestly, maybe I misspoke because I think what I meant more was how hard at that time, at least, the Korean people worked. It seemed like a beehive.
It is like to walk into an anime. When I was in my department, it felt like a library. And so, if you think of having a bag of chips and wanting to open them and feeling like it's too loud, that's what it kind of felt like when I worked at the studio, where it was very quiet.
But as hard as they worked at night, we partied pretty hard. In fact, I
Yes, they do that as well.
did not understand how we could party all night and they're up the next day back in the studio working. But that's where I first sang karaoke.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
When I came back to America, I actually wanted to open a private karaoke room based on my experience in Korea with the note bongs, like the
Yeah. It was great. It was a lot of fun. A lot of,
yeah,
so I mean, I really like that they worked hard and played hard because that's kind
yeah.
of my life.
Hmm.
It's what I've done. So, and of the different cultures I've worked with, I found the Koreans the most amenable.
Hmm.
Uh, like the Japanese experience I had, they wanted to do
Hmm.
everything their way. Um, the Chinese are similar, but
Hmm.
the Koreans just wanted you to tell them what you want, and they will do
Yeah.
it. And so there wasn't as much challenge of going back and
Hmm.
forth of you know trying to keep the vision intact because
Yeah.
somebody else has seen it a different way and they're changing. So
Yeah, a lot of people typically, from America, they want to go to Japan and China and, Korea isn't even on people's radar. But I highly suggest that people go to Korea because it's, I don't know if this existed when you went, but there's this concept like when I went called cracked chicken. And so it's like really good fried chicken.
mhm.
And I just feel like personally that from when I was there from 2009 to 2011, that Koreans are just black people who look Asian because we have very similar cultures.
I could see that. I could see that for sure. Um, there was a young lady here that opened up it, and I think it was in Koreatown. She opened up a cracked chicken restaurant.
Mm-hmm. Because
Um,
there's the Kyochun and then there's like two other ones, but it's so good. They make fried chicken so well. And I
mhm,
heard they learned from the military, the black military people.
mhm,
So
mhm,
that's why I guess they just perfected it
mhm.
further than your
Yeah.
down home southern fried chicken.
Mhm. And of course, shopping in Korea is amazing.
Yes, I got because I'm in a sorority, so I got a motorcycle jacket with like my I got my name in Korean, and then I got the little drawing on the back for $200, real leather.
Hey, was it tailor made?
Yes,
Yeah.
I got the sleeves. I got the sleeves how I wanted them. I know the military men, particularly guys that have different bodies, like they might have broad shoulders or they just can't fit a lot of suits or something. They'll get like the fabric and get 9 suits made while they're stationed in Korea.
That's what I did. I love it. And they're fast. The tailors there are
Yeah.
fast. So no, I can't say Korea is boring. But again, I didn't live there the way you did.
Yeah.
I would just
Hmm.
and also
I was
realize
about to say I got to take you back.
I would go. I would go. But I realized I was in a kind of a privileged position as the
Hmm.
director. They were looking to cater to me and what I wanted,
Yeah.
and but I appreciate it. It was great.
So can you tell about your experiences, kind of going to Japan and France, like being there and how it was different?
Japan was fascinating. Very nice culture and people. Even though you can tell there's xenophobia there, there's
Hmm.
very few people who are. If you're not Japanese, you stand out like a sore thumb. Just put it like
Yeah.
that. But their technology is so far advanced than ours, even in Korea. But
Yes.
Japan was really just cutting edge out there. And I liked, actually, I personally would not have minded living in Japan or Korea
Hmm.
because I like their discipline and focus of
Yeah.
um, the task done. And there's times here I would feel like I have to pull teeth from the artist. There,
Hmm.
they want you, once you tell them this is how it goes, this is how it works. They're in it, and they're looking to raise the bar and make it better.
Hmm.
And I like that. I like that a lot. And of course, the food. I learned at an early age when in Rome, do as the Romans. So
Yeah.
I've enjoyed different cuisines everywhere I go.
Yeah. I grew up being a finicky kid, so moving to Korea, I had to get rid of that.
It really, yeah,
It helped tremendously with my vegetable intake as well.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, they have so many courses. There was a restaurant they took me
Yes.
to. It was up in the mountains, and well, it was on top of the mountain, but
Hmm.
it had uh, a lot of vegetables,
Hmm.
kimchi, and
Yeah.
a lot of kimchi, and roots, and things I would
Yeah.
never have eaten,
Hmm.
but they were edible, and most of them good. But
Hmm.
again, I will experiment and try different things. So it was fascinating. I really liked
Yeah, I remember when I was the first year I was there when I was an English teacher. We were on like a teacher retreat, and you know, you mentioned that they have a lot of courses, so they kept bringing out food, and I feel like I had figured out at that point, when they bring out the fruit, that means it's over. But after they brought out the fruit, they brought out more stuff. I'm like, they keep feeding us. And I remember I mentioned this to my co-teacher, and she was like, but she was thinking, but Americans are fat, so like, why is this too much? I'm like, but y'all have healthy portions. Like we just eat a small portion of unhealthy, like McDonald's. We
it.
don't have like servings of that.
Yeah.
That's not what's making us fat. What's making us fat is the fat content and how unhealthy it is, not how much we're eating
Yeah.
always.
Yeah.
And so
I
she was like, oh, okay.
the end of the meal, which surprised me, was the soup. They
Hmm.
ate last. And when they brought it out, I said, "What's this?" They said, "Soup. We have soup now." I said, "No, that goes first."
Oh, another cultural difference is, at least when I went, you have the fried chicken, they have chicken and beer places. And so if I was to bring fried chicken for lunch, they would look at me weird because fried chicken is to be consumed with beer. So it's not like a meal that they have separately or at home. It's just like a novelty thing where, okay, we're going out to drink beer and we're having fried chicken as well. So that's another cultural difference where, if I had leftovers or something and brought some fried chicken, like, you're eating fried chicken for lunch, like, yeah, it's food.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. They always
Hmm.
take me out to a restaurant to lunch, but I did at one point say to them, "I want all the food I'm going to eat in front of me right now." But bringing out courses, I couldn't pace myself. There was 7 vegetable food, plates of vegetables, and then the fish and the sushi,
Yeah.
and it just and like you're saying, it just kept coming. And finally, I just said, "I want to." I'm ashamed to say it now, but I had them take me to Fridays, and I
Like, let me just get something I know really quick.
not just know
That's going to
what I
stop.
know is this is it. What I ordered is it. It's not going to be 5 more servings of whatever, but
That's
their food is delicious, and I love with the way they would explain what the dishes were and how they came about. I don't,
funny.
but I love that about food. Now, one of the most interesting food experiences I had is the head of the studio. He said, "I ordered something from the Air Force, Navy, and Marines." I said, "What does that mean?" So he ordered fowl, um, fowl, beef, and seafood,
Hmm.
but he called them, branches of the
Yeah.
military. But they brought out uh, uh, jellyfish,
I don't think I ever had that there.
and he said the chef preparing the jellyfish had to be licensed. And I said, "Well, why?" He said, "Because this can kill you. The jellyfish is so poison, it will kill you." Of course, I didn't. But I said, "Well, how many people died before they got it right? And who was that hungry that they would eat this thing that could kill?" I never got an answer, but I just found that fascinating. Like, really?
Yeah.
Actually, I ate a little bit of it. It was totally tasteless. It just, but I love food from different cultures, and as long as it's not too far out there. Of course, food in Paris is amazing, and
Mm-hmm.
they have some of the best sauces. Just their whole affair with food and wine. Oh God, I drink. You drink wine like water in Paris, but it's awesome. It's really.
What about the aesthetic of France and anything else that you experienced over there?
Paris is like a living art history book
Mm-hmm.
come to life. The statues, architecture. Uh, it's just incredible, beautiful, beautiful, and you understand where Washington D.C. is modeled on here,
Mm-hmm.
thanks to Benjamin Banneker. But you could see the influences of New York and the cities on the East Coast. But yeah, Paris is incredible.
We were literally talking about that earlier today in this conference I did a presentation for, and we were in the networking, the breakout session, and we were talking about the DC roads, and somebody was saying, yeah, they're based on European, and so they were trying to kind of get the gist of that, but that's why there's so many roundabouts and stuff.
Yeah, Paris is full of it. And
Mm-hmm.
it's as close as you'll come to being on a roller coaster, flat on the ground. But I was driving with this young lady. Well, she was driving, and their cars are at that time were really small, and they still are.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing, seeing all the different cars there are in the world. Besides, Chevy and Ford. But
Right.
we're going around the Arc of the Triumph, which is a
Mm-hmm.
huge roundabout of many. But she's looking at me, driving and talking. And I'm just like, oh my God, it's over. I'm looking at cars coming in, joining the roundabout and coming at us. And she is just cool as a cucumber. And we go out, we come out, we didn't have an accident.
Mm-hmm.
And she parks. And she literally parked like Goofy. We moved the car behind us, moved the car in front of us. She got that little car in there. And there wasn't enough room. She made and got out and said, let's go. And I just fell out laughing.
Oh my gosh.
It was
That's hilarious.
It was. And I said, and her car was so small. I said, in America, that somebody would flip this car over, come out, look at what you've done, and just raise it up. Because it was a little bigger than one of those little smart cars, but it was
wow.
flying. And it was just fascinating. And I said, a friend of mine who I'd gone with, the American, said, let's rent a car. This was before I had driven in a car. I knew, no, absolutely not. I said, no way, not drive. Here or London. Have you been to London? Where they drive on the road?
I was on like a 24-hour layover on the way to Dubai, so a little bit.
Yeah. London and Japan. I think London, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand. They drive on the opposite side of the road.
Mm-hmm.
And I would never try driving there either. In fact, when I was on a bus in Japan, coming from the airport, and he makes a left turn, and my heart came up in my throat as I thought, oh my God, we're going to have a head-on accident with oncoming traffic. He's driving on the road. I looked around, everybody's cool, and then I figured it out. This is how it works here. Okay. But that initial reaction, like, well, another
That's
interesting
funny.
experience in Japan was, they have a lot of earthquakes.
Yeah.
So I'm up in a high-rise hotel, and we have an earthquake. And I think they innovated putting the buildings on rollers.
Mm-hmm.
Put high rises on rollers now. I think they started that. This was the
Mm-hmm.
smallest earthquake. I mean, we felt it, but everybody paused for 1 second. Earthquake over, business as usual. And again, I looked around like, what? Hey, no big deal.
Right.
I said, okay, this is, you know,
Mm-hmm.
um, then, when we were traveling was fun. Now everything is at the computer.
Yeah.
Um, I've been working on international projects. The only restriction are the time zones, just
Yeah.
making sure you're awake when they are,
Mm-hmm.
and vice versa. But it doesn't matter where you are or where your artists are. So actually, it kind of opens up
Yeah.
uh, the playing field of people you can recruit and work with, uh, and who would want to travel now. No one. But back
Not
in
if you want to live.
back in the day, traveling was a lot of a fun perk to it.
So, has being black impacted your career in any way? Working in studios or.
Yes, of course.
Mm-hmm. Some people don't acknowledge it.
Well, I have never lost sight of the fact that I'm black, and
Mm-hmm.
throughout my career, often being the only one in the room as pitches were taken or given or production meetings. And if I didn't make a concerted effort to hire Black people on my crew, I would still
Mm-hmm.
be a Black person, but I would make an effort to bring in uh, new talent, African American talent. But the first experience I had, overt experience I had of being Black, I was actually unaware of it, but when I was at the studio at Filmation, and I had been promoted to be an animator. Well, there was a known Nazi sympathizer working at this Jewish studio. The founders and all the people who ran the studio were Jews. Very nice. But this guy dressed white shirt, tie every day, just
Mm-hmm.
very stiff and stuff. So they gave him uh, as an assistant animator, you picked your work up. You were given work out of a pool, and there was one person who assigned the work. Well, they gave him one of the scenes I had animated, and he gave it back. And he said, "I refuse to work under him. I won't. I won't work on a scene he's animated." So the gentleman got up, went to management, and told them what happened and what he said. So they came back and said to him, "You either work on his scene or you get out of here." I didn't find out until 8, 9 months later at another
Mm-hmm.
studio. I was working at I was working on a feature at the time, and some of my friends were there, and they told me the incident, and I had no clue.
Wow.
But uh, but the studio did not stand for it. They did not tolerate it. So, as far as hiring and promotions, I'm sure there have been times I was overlooked or passed over.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, I think because of my hard work and my skills as an artist, as an animator, my culture and race didn't hold me back. I think it even opened doors for me
Mm-hmm.
on certain projects. But overall, looking at the body of work I've done, I couldn't have worked on that many shows if race was an issue.
Yeah.
And but I also had support across the board from other Black artists, directors, and other people. What I found in animation more often than not was a camaraderie of people just wanting to work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it being, yeah, there probably were people who were there gatekeepers in a sense. It was like the higher up you went, like if you wanted to create a show,
Mm-hmm.
that's where you had roadblocks because
Yeah.
you know they want to keep the white ideal. In fact, I had proposed an article to Ebony magazine, and this was again back in the '80s, but
Mm-hmm.
I titled it "Equal Opportunity in Fantasy,"
Mm-hmm.
and I said our dreams are not being honored. We're the funniest people, most entertaining people. We
Mm-hmm.
movies, we can be on TV, but when it comes to animation, we're shut down, we're blocked. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, I got a thanks but no thanks letter. They weren't interested.
Wow.
But things have changed.
Yeah.
Thankfully, yeah, things have changed.
Um. So again, you've held several leadership roles in the animation industry. What advice can you give to people who want to climb the ranks in the animation industry?
Well, take advantage of every opportunity you're given.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, my attitude is you're not going to get rich making cartoons. Just enjoy making
Yeah.
and keep your keep your mind open. Learn everything you can about storytelling, about the process, about collaborating, and do your best to be inspiring. Um, I think the opportunities young people have now are amazing, and
Mm-hmm.
you can see in the next 5 to 10 years. But there are already efforts being made for the Black streaming services to get out. Like one of the things that held us back is there was only ABC, CBS, and NBC, and
Yeah.
maybe Fox and NWB. But now you've got the internet, cable.
Yeah.
There's just so many out, as well as YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
I for years said, look, put your idea up on YouTube. You get views, get attention, they will come to you.
Yeah.
So, you know, But what it takes is that dream and passion to make the dream come true and stick to it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't give up. The list of guys who had ideas and how long it took that appear to be overnight successes, how long it took for them to get that success.
Yeah.
It's quite impressive. Uh, and it just took a won't give up,
Mm-hmm.
this at all cost attitude. So that's what I would encourage someone to do that really wants to go to the next level, in terms of either being a creator, writer, or being at the top tier of production.
Um, what do you think are the characteristics of a good leader in the animation industry?
Well, one who has a
Mm-hmm.
visionary person who understands the process, the pipeline process, however you want to term it, but who's able to work with people across the board, inspire people, inspire your team, your crew, and be humble enough to know when you need to make a change. Things
Mm-hmm.
may not be working one way. I mean, I look at it like this: we're building something together, and eventually you pour concrete to make the foundation. But until the concrete dries, it's malleable. You can
Mm-hmm.
shift and change and bring something new, just knowing at what point to do that. And
Mm-hmm.
but but assembling a good team around you, and then just staying on point.
Uh, so you have a project in the works, JG and the BC Kids with Janet Hubert. Are you excited about that?
I am. Is it out there? Where did you get that?
As my friends in college used to say, Deborah knows. Just a Google
Okay,
search away.
yes, because this just came up in the last, oh gosh, maybe 3 months or so. But yes, I'm
I do
I'm
my research.
hats off, kudos, very good, very good. Yes, I'm collaborating with Janet Hubert, and
For those who do not recognize the name, that's the dark skinned outfit from the Fresh Prince of Bel Air.
yeah, she was the first Aunt Vivian.
Mm-hmm.
She has not been given a fair representation, I would say, in the media. I
Mm-hmm.
find her a very fun person to collaborate with, uh, very creative, very open. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
we're in the process of writing the script now, and all the balls are getting up in the air. I've been
Mm-hmm.
working with designers, with the world at large, and the kids. And it's a dream that she has had for 10 to 15 years. And she's just really focused on it in this past year. And
Mm-hmm.
that's also a fun aspect of what we do, is to see someone's dream, being a part of helping their dream
Yeah.
to reality. And and that's the case with her.
Do you have
So
like an overview or a gist of what it's about?
it's about empowering children who um, have been bullied, and
Mm-hmm.
um, that are, they're not the cool kids, they're the nerdy kids.
Mm-hmm.
But JG is their science teacher who comes from another world. They will find out
Mm-hmm.
an agenda of bringing the smart kids with the street smart kids,
Mm-hmm.
uniting them for a common goal and purpose that will empower and make them better, and also solve the problem that a bigger problem that they're dealing with in the world. That we've got to have a villain who wants to take over.
Yeah.
They've got to stop him, and how they stop him and what he wants to do. That's the secret. But
Yeah.
it's a good project. It's diverse. The main characters are African American, but they are surrounded by a culturally diverse crew, and the actors will likewise be diverse. And you know, it's taking advantage of the things that I'm seeing now. I've been seeing actually in the last 5 years, where more and more diverse projects are being greenlit and
Mm-hmm.
being brought to the top tier creative level to make it happen.
Yeah.
And that's exciting.
So, what do you feel like is the importance of incorporating your culture in projects when given the opportunity? Like, and what do you hope for, young artists to do with, all the access you mentioned that we have, and just kind of creating our own projects?
Well, I look back at my childhood of how cartoons and entertainment influenced my life, opened up my mind to different things. And that's what I hope to do with, with the audience that watches my cartoons and
Mm-hmm.
shows. So I try to layer in things from our culture on a global level.
Mm-hmm.
African images, African American images, uh, the way we speak,
Mm-hmm.
creating characters that a young person can look at and say, I understand who this kid
Yeah.
is. This kid is me.
Mm-hmm.
I know that, or I know someone like that. Getting back to when you were asking me about superheroes, there was an advertisement in a magazine, and it was a young black boy looking in the mirror. He had a cape on and a T-shirt like Superman, but the image in the mirror was white. It was Superman, but it was how he was seeing himself. I can't remember what.
Yeah.
I think it was something to the effect of how young black kids saw themselves at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to motivate and inspire kids of our culture and others to break out
Yeah.
of the mold. Um, not no put down of the white class or white culture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So long, that's what it's been, and there's such diversity in our culture and in others that will only make the world better the more we bring that out. So that's my dream and objective and my goal.
Along those lines, I watched. I have to look at how to pronounce it because uh, Jirum Pimbira.
Yeah.
It's a
You
tongue
saw that?
twister, but it was
Yaron
on
Pimbi.
YouTube.
Oh wow. Is it? Okay. Did
So
you
how
like
did you get? Yeah, how did you get connected with that, and what was your involvement with that?
When I was at Hanna-Barbera, the head of children's programming, she was a young lady named Jenny Trias. She was Filipino.
Mm-hmm.
And I had worked on 2 seasons of the Addams Family at Hanna-Barbera for her, for ABC, her ABC. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
she had wanted to do fairy tales from different cultures, uh,
Mm-hmm.
Hispanic and African and so on. But this was the first one. So she literally came to me and asked me if I would direct it. It was through another studio, Ruby Spears. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they were small. They were an offshoot from Hanna Barbera. Actually, they created these two guys created Scooby Doo,
Okay.
and she was great fans of theirs, and they started their own studio. They did shows like Thundar Barbarian and some other stuff. But um, she came to them, said, "I want you to do this, but I want Ron Myrick to direct it." And it was fun. It was well written, um, nice designs. I put a nice crew together. It was one of the more fun experiences,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully, I had hoped there will be more to come, but that was the only one.
Oh, unfortunate. Well, I enjoyed it. And
Thank
if you want to look it up on YouTube, people, it is JIRIMPIMBIRA, and so an African folktale.
Yeah, yeah. It's a magic word with the bones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. So, just a couple more questions. Like, if you had a documentary about your life, what would you highlight outside of your work in animation?
Uh, my family wanted
Mm-hmm.
to su- help support my mother with 3 kids, single mother.
Mm-hmm.
Um, now, you know, by the grace of God, she's still with us. She's 90 years old.
Nice.
And we celebrate life and having made it through some really hard times.
Mm-hmm.
But that, as well as traveling the country and the experiences I gained,
Mm-hmm.
being in Brooklyn, being in Atlanta, Chicago. Yeah. I would say actually the most interesting part of all that is when my father left. Uh, my mother sent me to Chicago to live with her sister.
Mm-hmm.
I was 8 years old, and she put me on the train by myself. You would never do that with a child.
Right.
And we met a gentleman at the train station, African American gentleman, and he saw the situation and he said, "Oh, he can sit with me and I'll keep an eye on him."
Mm-hmm.
I would go up and down the train car playing with kids and had a grand time. But from that laid the foundation for me traveling the world alone,
Mm-hmm.
having the confidence of,
Yeah.
well, I got to go to Paris, got to go to Korea, and
Mm-hmm.
not knowing the language, not knowing anything, just hit the ground and start making things happen. But
Yeah.
and that would be part of my story as well.
Nice. Um. So, what do you hope for the future of animation, as in like innovation? And have you seen the the 2D animation Klaus that came out last year.
Yeah, yes, beautiful.
So like, I've kind of discussed with other people. Klaus was kind of the innovation for 2D, and then Into the Spider-Verse was kind of that innovation for 3D. So what do you hope for the future of like innovation and storylines and characters?
Well, that's a good question. As far as the technology and the look of animation, I just think doors are being opened um, that are going to improve the look of animation, and I'm hoping that we are able to take advantage of African American
Mm-hmm.
creators. Something as beautiful as Hair Love. You know,
Yeah,
love the animation, and as well as Into the Spider-Verse. And story-wise, just, you know, I love reading. There's so many stories to be told.
mm-hmm.
Mhm. Music. Uh, I'd like to see an African American, an animated movie and or series that took advantage of our music, and
Mm-hmm.
not just hip hop, but certainly hip hop, but blues, uh, jazz,
Mm-hmm.
all the genres. I'm a huge music lover, and anyone who sees this knows that music and theater are my passion. So the the biggest void the pandemic has brought to me is closing the Hollywood Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
I will be there every week, several times. Just, it renews my spirit and
Yeah,
inspires me. But to really feature that in animation would be
definitely.
fantastic. Yeah. The if something like Beyonce's recent movie, The Black King,
Black is King. Yeah,
something like that could be translated into animation. That would be,
definitely.
but and I'm excited. I believe that it's on the horizon.
I believe too. So I would like to thank you for coming on my channel and letting me highlight you. If anybody's interested in connecting with you, how can they do that?
Through my email, myrickron@gmail.com, or connect with me on LinkedIn. And Deborah, I want to thank you. This has been a
Mm-hmm.
real pleasure. You are an amazing young lady and rising star, I'm sure. I think this is really fantastic, and I'm honored that you asked me to come on your station, and I hope I've inspired or will inspire some.
Yes, definitely. You're great.
Thank you.
So to everyone out there, I would like you to like so I know it's real, comment and tell me how you feel, subscribe to Seal the Deal, and sign up for post notifications to show your zeal. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace.